Alright, here's the thing, guys. Don't pull fire alarms in public buildings. You can't do that. You just can't. Okay, it is not good, and you'll get in serious trouble, and the consequences are just as bad. So, when you pull that alarm, it goes to the panel, then it sounds everything, then you're in trouble. So, if you're sounding them for no reason, I don't know why you're doing that, but you got to stop. It has happened to me in the past. When I was in elementary school, kids would pull the fire alarm because they thought it was funny, but it was not. And they got in really big trouble for pulling that fire alarm. I believe they got suspended from school for pulling the fire alarm. Now, if there's a fire, you can pull the fire alarm. But if there's no fire and you're just doing it for fun, you can't do that. If you pull fire alarms for fun in a public building here in the state of Virginia, it is an automatic class 1 misdemeanor to do that. So you don't ever pull fire alarms in public buildings unless there is a real fire, or if you have permission from your principal to do it during a fire drill at school, or if you have permission to test the fire alarm system, or if you get your own fire alarm, then you can pull it. But the bottom line is, don't ever pull fire alarms in a public building unless there's actually a fire. If you pull the fire alarm in a public building, you can get arrested. If you pull the fire alarm when there's no fire, you can get arrested for doing that. I mean, it is against the law to pull the fire alarm if there's no fire. So you don't ever pull fire alarms when there is no fire. And if you're a kid in school, you'll get grounded for pulling the fire alarm when there is no fire. Remember one time in a hotel, there were a couple teenagers that pulled the fire alarm in that hotel and they got in a lot of trouble. Yeah, this is very serious stuff. And also, some people took the key out of an announce feeder in the wall and opened a pull station. That is tampering. You cannot do that. You can't pull them. You can't tamper with them. Absolutely not. If you pull the fire alarm in my school, you can get suspended for a long time or even expelled. I mean, I heard in my school, if you pull the fire alarm when there's no fire, you can get suspended from school for weeks, or in some cases, you can get expelled if you pull the fire alarm in my school. And the firefighters can charge a fine if it's false alarm. And if you pull the fire alarm in my school, you can automatically get arrested. I heard that. So, I'm serious, guys. Don't ever pull fire alarms in public buildings when there's not a fire. I mean, if you pull the fire alarm in school, you can get expelled permanently from school. That's the case in my school. If you pull the fire alarm in my school, you're automatically expelled. You'll never be able to come back. If you pull the fire alarm in my school when there's no fire, you will be automatically expelled. Thankfully, I never had anyone pull the fire alarm as a prank when I was in high school. Um, the school resource the school resource officer is going to catch someone that pulls the fire alarm when there's not a fire. I mean, if you pull the fire alarm when there is not a fire in my school, then you're going to have a big talk with the school resource officer. And security, all that. So, you don't ever pull fire alarms in any public building unless there's a real fire. I mean, if you're one of the people that like to pull fire alarms, then shame on you. If you like to pull fire alarms, then I'm not gonna like you. I'm not gonna like people that like to pull fire alarms. If you like to pull fire alarms, shame on you. Because you don't ever pull fire alarms for fun. I mean, in my high school, if you pull the fire alarm, you can get expelled permanently and you'll never be able to come back to school. In my high school, if you pull the fire alarm when there's no fire, you will be expelled permanently and you'll never come back. If you pull the fire alarm, you'll lose privileges for senior prom and all that. So, yeah, this is very big stuff. These are very big consequences. So, think twice before you pull the fire alarm when there's no fire. I mean, if you pull the fire alarm in a grocery store, a restaurant, or a shopping mall, or anywhere, they'll never want you back. I mean, if you pull the fire alarm at your job when there's no fire, you'll get fired. So, I'm serious. I mean, in your house of worship, if you pull the fire alarm, they're never going to allow you to come back. This is very serious stuff. Or if you're in a place that has a program where children with special needs can spend the weekend away from the parents, a place like Jill's house, if you pull the fire alarm in places like that, you're never going to be able to go there again. I mean, in a recreation center, if you pull the fire alarm, you're never going to be able to come back. This is very serious stuff. I mean, if you pull the fire alarm, you're going to lose ice cream for the rest of your life if you pull the fire alarm when there's no fire. I mean, if you pull a fire alarm when there's no fire, then say goodbye to ice cream and other treats for the rest of your life. So, that is not good. If you pull that fire alarm in a movie theater, you'll never be able to come back to the movie theater. If you pull a fire alarm anywhere, you'll never be able to come back to any building. I mean, if you pull a fire alarm, if you pull a fire alarm when there's no fire, you're gonna lose a lot of privileges and you're gonna lose treats for the rest of your life. So, these are many reasons why you should never ever pull fire alarms unless there's a real fire. And if you pull a false fire alarm, the fire department will have to respond to a false alarm, and there could be a real fire somewhere else. Well, the people die because the firefighter was not there because an idiot decided to pull a false alarm. Don't do that. Yeah. People that have pulled the fire alarm when there was no fire are in jail right now. They cannot get treats for the rest of their life. They're expelled from school. When they did it in school when they were kids, they would never come back to school ever again, and a lot of that. So I'm never going to do that, or else I'll have very big consequences in the future. And if you pull the fire alarm when there's no fire, you'll not be able to get a job. So I'm serious, man. Do do not mess around. Do not mess around with the fire alarm. It is not funny to pull fire alarms. It is a very serious offense if you pull a fire alarm when there's no fire. So I never pulled fire alarms in my life unless there was an emergency, or if I had permission to do it during drills, which I never did, or if I had permission to test it, or if I had my own fire alarm, and I never will. And it makes me mad when I see people walk up to fire alarms in buildings to pull them. I mean, you cannot be pulling fire alarms in any building unless there is a real fire. Or else you're going to have very big consequences. I mean, I mean, I mean, your grandparents will be mad at you if you pull the fire alarm in school, too. I mean, your grandparents say, well, like, your grandparents say, my grandchildren have been pulling fire alarms in school when there is no fire, and I don't want to see them. That's what you don't want. And if you pull the fire alarm, your grandparents are also going to be mad with you. I mean, grandparents don't want to hear about their grandchildren pulling fire alarms. Aunts and uncles don't want to hear about their nieces or nephews pulling fire alarms without real fire. Cousins don't want to hear about their other cousins pulling that fire alarm without a real fire. I mean, your grandparents are going to be very angry at you if you pull the fire alarm. So, don't ever pull it unless there's a real fire. You're going to have a lot of people mad at you. You're going to have the police, the fire department, the judge. Maybe you're going to have the president mad at you. All the government officials. Yeah. You don't pull it unless there's a real fire, or else you're going to have to face the consequences. Bye.